Good afternoon, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Judges, and it's important for us now to frame ourselves with a better understanding of this phrase for 40 years. It says here, and then the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and Jehovah delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. We need to now understand that this is a continuation with a time that is slightly before this chapter, which is a couple of verses above. What is important is, again, we note that Israel actually did evil. Evil is Ra in the eyes of the Lord. So always understand, evil, like good, is always viewed from the eyes of the beholder. In this case, it's God Himself, Jehovah, looking at Israel. And the children of Israel perform. And this one did means they actually did actions or did work or make choices. And God gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. Now, I want us to understand that this is a slightly different way of constructing the 40 years. It is not in a chronological order. And so let me just explain a little bit by way of a chart. I want us to be aware that after Yiftach judged Israel for 6 years, then we have Ibzan, Elon, Avdon, and Samson, right? We'll talk about Samson a little later. The 40 years start here, all the way down at the end of Samson. And Samson ruled for 20 years. So this period of time, we have Ibzan, Elon, Avdon. And so we have 8 years. Elon was 10 years. And Ibzan was 7 years. So basically, what we're seeing in the 40 years of the Philistines would be sometime here. And that would make 40 years. I hope you understand this. So we are actually looking at this chapter here. And from chapter 13 onwards, for a few chapters, we're talking about Samson. But we are really saying that this particular line, starting from at the end, towards the end of Ibzan, all the way to the end of Samson, would be 40 years by the Philistines. It is not 40 years after, it's 40 years at the end of Samson. Because right after Samson, we have already covered the book of First Samuel, which would be Eli, and he would rule for 40 years. Now, that would be the frame that I want to highlight because this 40 years actually starts towards the end of Ibzan, so that we have a better understanding of where things are. Now, coming back to Judges chapter 13. So we've explained where the 40 years come from Ibzan to the end of Samson. Again, I remind you that evil, like good, is always viewed in the eyes of the beholder. Now, I keep repeating this because it is important for us to be very clear how evil and good is understood in the Hebrew expression. Now, during this 40 years, a man a particular man from Zorah, from the family of the Dani. This is the tribe of Dan, right? The tribe of Dan. Now, one of the things that you would have noticed by now that the tribe of Dan was not given really a particular place. They were on a hill, and they were not allowed to come down because the enemies around them would not let them come down. And so they didn't have enough space for themselves. We will read more about the tribe of Dan. I think it'll be a bit later in chapter 18. Then we will see in chapter 18, Dan moves up north beyond all the inheritance of the tribes and sits right at the top part of the land of Israel. And I will cover that when we get to chapter 18. But for now, at this point in time, the tribe of Dan is just mingling around the lands of the rest of the tribes. Now, interestingly, Dan is a small tribe, but there was a man by the name of Manoach. And then his wife was barren. Now, barrenness is no children, basically. So with this, you can see this is an A and this is a B. The idea of barren is no children. So now you're beginning to see a lot of these two statements that repeat itself slightly differently, but the emphasis is she had no children. She was not able to give birth. Now, we don't know why, but all we do know was she was barren. Now, there were a number of women in the Bible that were barren. Now, is barrenness an issue? And the answer is yes. In the ancient days, in the lives of Oriental culture, the woman's real role is to give birth. The ability to produce life fulfills the role of a woman. So a woman will grow up, get married, and have children. And she got married to Manoach, but she was not able to give birth to any children whatsoever. Now, she is in the tribe of Dan. And the worst thing is the tribe of Dan is also a very small tribe. And so children is even more important. Verse 3. And now an angel of the Lord. Now, the idea of angel of the Lord here would be Malach, Jehovah. Remember, a Malach is someone who walks on behalf of another, practically for the sender. And so in this case, it would be Jehovah himself who would send this Malach. And so this is commonly translated as angel or messenger by defining the role that this angel is bringing a message to the wife. And so this word here is to cause her to see. The word appear was seen. We use the word appear, but the focus of the word is about seeing. Who saw the angel of the Lord? The woman. Who is this woman? This is that woman. So that we can connect the dots first, then we will have a better understanding. The angel of the Lord spoke to her after the woman saw the angel of the Lord. Now, the reason why the wording is such that the angel of the Lord was seen by the woman is to allude to the fact that only the woman saw the angel of the Lord. And the angel said this, indeed, now you are barren and have borne no children. Again, this is an A and a B. And by saying that she had borne no children, reinforces her idea of barrenness. And then it says, but you shall conceive. The word here is you shall conceive. And the word conceive at the end of verse 3 says this, you will be pregnant. You will be pregnant. And what more is pregnant? And you will bear a son. So take note that this is, and then you will bear a son. Now, the word bear a son is to bring forth. So we have one action, you have to get pregnant. And then number two, you will give birth. Now, this way of expressing is very common in the Hebrew Bible. You would see this first in Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. And the woman conceived and she bore a son. And so it's always expressed this way. You would conceive first, and when the time comes, you will bring forth or give birth to, in this case, a son, very specifically a son. Giving birth to a son is a very important element because the Oriental life favors a son over a daughter. The firstborn is always viewed from the standpoint of a son. And so this angel of the Lord is making a prediction. While now you are barren, and now you bear no children, but you will. You will. Didn't say when, but gives her some instructions. He says, now therefore, please be careful. This idea, please be careful, is to guard yourself. Guard yourself. What to guard? Not to drink wine or drink. Now, this word similar doesn't make the cut. I think we would say, do not drink wine and shekhar. Now, what is shekhar? This is strong drink. Is there a difference between wine and strong drink? And the answer is yes. What's the difference? You will see that wine is yayin. This is from the grape. And what's important from the way that we understand is that wine has new wine and old wine. New wine is where the fermentation has just begun and there is not much alcohol content. So the intoxication level is shallow. But when wine is fermented for a longer period of time, then you would find a lot more alcohol. And I've been also told that they can also ferment barley, which you would get beer or the equivalent of beer. But as they ferment the drink or they keep the fermentation to a longer period, then the alcohol content becomes very high. And so it becomes very easily intoxicated when somebody drinks it. So that would be shekhar, strong drink, meaning stronger than the new wine. And then she's told, do not eat anything unclean. The word unclean here always refers to Leviticus. And by Leviticus, I think we should always remember this is really part of the instruction of God to the Israelites, that they are told not to eat of anything that God has declared unclean. Now, what is the problem of an unclean animal? Now, we are not going to discuss that too much, but let me just give you a quick brief. The unclean animal in the book of Leviticus basically describes a dietary law. The dietary law in Leviticus was given very specifically to the Israelites, not to anyone else, but just to the Israelites. This is in Leviticus 11. And at the end of Leviticus 11, it talks about being holy. So let me just briefly explain to you what is so important about this unclean thing that they're not supposed to eat. Wine, yayin, strong drink, shakar, and anything unclean. When God gave this instruction to the Israelites, God had a rule that says any animal or land animal that has hoofed, split hoof, or cloven footed, and chew the cud, those animals you can eat. Everything else you can't. And when it's about fish, it must have scales and fins, and so on and so forth. So chapter 11 of Leviticus gives that idea. And so the woman now is told, don't eat any of the animals that is considered unclean in that list, because you are holy. Be holy, for I am holy. And so the food diet law clearly separates the Israelites from everyone else around them. And the woman is to be very careful, because the idea is not to contaminate the baby. That's the picture. Don't eat anything, which means that occasionally some people might. And of course, they would go and seek forgiveness. But in this particular case, don't even have an accidental action of eating. Because behold, you will conceive, be pregnant, and bear a son, not a daughter. And then it says, no razor shall come upon his head. Don't shave his head, which means that the hair is going to grow very long. For the child shall be a Nazri. Now, this idea of a Nazri has to be very clear, because this is not a Nazarene, but a Nazarite. It means that this is a person who has been consecrated, being set apart. So a person who is set apart. So he's special. And being special, this unclean would be, you are a holy nation. So that links to a Nazri, right? A Nazir, right? Nazir. So let me just spell this out. Nazir. Basically to say that this person, or this child, in this case, this son, is set apart from the womb. This is interesting. Jeremiah says that I was set apart from the womb. So this person, or this baby, is also set apart from the womb. God says, I want this son. I'm going to give you a son, and he will begin to deliver Israel. Notice, he will begin to save Israel. They are in the hand of the Philistines. God gave them into the hands of the Philistines. And so during this time, God says, I will raise him up and I want to use him to take Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. So by these combination of information, you will notice that this child lives in this part of the 40 years. But he's a very special child, very holy, very set apart, and he operates like a Nazir, and he will not have his hair cut. Now, it is not because of this child, it's because of this ritual called a Nazir. In verse 6, and then the woman came and told her husband. Notice what she tells the husband is not everything that was said. So he said, a man of God came to me. Understand this, a man of God. Literally, the woman saw a man and she considers him to be a man of God. He has to come from God. Why? Because he looks special. His countenance was like the countenance of the angel of the Lord. And so it says the countenance. Countenance means the appearance, right? The vision or appearance. Now, bear in mind at this point in time, you will have to understand she wouldn't have seen an angel before. So she's making some comments. None of us have seen an angel before. So how can you tell that this was an angel of God? So she was expressing this statement. The countenance was like the countenance of the messenger of God, because he looked very awesome. Now, this word very awesome is an interesting expression. Very awesome means, I guess you could say, very fearful or fearsome. That's the word awesome. It's about being afraid. That it's very striking that when you look at this person, it gives you the shudder. That you look at the person, you are very afraid. This is what awesome actually means in the English. So the Hebrew literally means very fearsome. And so the woman looked at this angel is not because he was a handsome chap, but because she saw and it really stirred her up inside out. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said this to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. Do not drink wine or strong drink. Do not eat anything unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarene to God from the womb to the day of his death. Now, this is important. What did she not say? She did not speak about saving Israel from the Philistines. She didn't say this. She only said that the boy is going to be very special, set apart. And then Manoach prayed to the Lord. Now, this word here is not the word pray. This word here is to ask of God. I think that would be a better way to entreat. Entreated God. And so don't visualize this as a modern day prayer. It's an ancient Hebrew expression that God seek the face, that Manoach seek the face of Jehovah. Not just any God, but specifically Yehovah. And he said, "Oh, my Lord." This word here is Adonai, right? Or Adonai. Please let the man of God whom you send come to us again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born. And so Manoach is displaying a very righteous expression that he wants to make sure that they follow exactly what is needed to ensure the child is holy and special. And then God heard the voice of Manoach and sent the angel of God to the woman again as she was sitting in the field. But Manoach, her husband, was not with her. Every time you see the word husband, please understand that this is her man. In the good old days, husband is really the word man, and wife is literally the woman. And so the angel, the Malach, the Malach of Jehovah came. And then when that happened, the woman immediately ran and told her man and said to him, "Look, the man who came to me the other day has now appeared to me." And so this is in the field. Verse 11. So Manoach arose, followed his wife. When he came to the man of God, he said to him, "Are you the man who spoke to this woman, who is my wife?" And he says, "I am." Well, this word "I am" in verse 11 is actually a response. And basically, he just say, "Ani." And "ani" means I. And so English would supply the to be verb, right? And so when you say, "Are you the man who spoke to this woman?" I means yes, I am. Or I am the one who spoke to this woman. So Manoach said, "Now let your words come to pass." This means let your words happen, right? Come to pass, take place, happen. What will be the boy's rule of life and his work? Now, what do you mean, rule of life? He says, what shall guide this boy, right? What should be the rule of life, the conduct, and his work? In this case, when you say this one is what he is doing. How is he going to behave? That's basically what he's asking. What rules for him? What do you expect him? How do you expect him to behave? And so the angel of the Lord said to Manoach, "Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. Remember what she's to be careful. Do not eat anything from the vine, nor she may drink wine or strong drink, nor eat anything unclean. All that I commanded her, let her observe, let her keep, let her guard." So it's important now that now verse 14 basically says, don't drink any wine, whether it's young wine or a new wine or old wine or strong drink, nothing. So in this case, I think we can say no alcohol. This is a very special condition for this particular child. and make sure the mother. So the mother actually cares for the child's upbringing. Basically, the woman would feed the child, give the child what to eat. And it starts in the womb. It starts when the mother is pregnant. And so this rule is for the woman to keep from the day she gets pregnant all the way to giving birth to the child. The woman is not supposed to drink anything alcoholic or eat anything unclean. After hearing this, Manoach said to the angel of the Lord, please let me hold you back. Now, this idea is to restrain, hold back. Let me just delay you. Don't go just yet. We will prepare a young goat for you. And so this idea is literally a female goat, right? A female goat or a young goat. So don't know whether it's male or female, basically. It's from all the goat family. So a young goat is a good word. And this is to be initially thought of to cook something for the man of God. Now, why is this important for us to take note is this is Oriental hospitality. As you can see, those of you who are from the Oriental culture will understand this, that whenever somebody comes and visits you, especially if that person is very important, you would delay them and invite them for a meal. That is the intent here, to invite the angel of the Lord or the man of God for a meal. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, though you hold me back, I will not eat your food. Now, let me suggest to you what you would do. Make a burnt offering and offer it to the Lord. For Manoach did not know that he was the angel of the Lord. So this itself is something that needs to be understood. A burnt offering is to kill the animal, put it on the altar, and set it on fire and let it burn, and the smoke and the aroma will reach up to God. And offer it to God himself. Now, this picture of offering is really a picture of God eating the meal. So the angel of the Lord said, I'm not going to eat. God will eat your food. So make an offering. This is an exception because the altar is in Jerusalem. This is not Jerusalem. And so we see an exception made in this particular instance, that an offering was made to God. And then Manoah said to the angel, what is your name? That when your words come to pass, we may honor you. This seems to be very much like Jacob after the wrestling match with the angel of the Lord. And the angel of the Lord said to him, why do you need to know my name? And verse 18 basically says that my name is not important. It is wonderful, but the idea here is not wonderful, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. It is incomprehensible. But basically, it's to tell you it is unknown. And I'm not going to tell you. And so Manoach took the young goat with the grain offering, offered it upon the rock to the Lord. So the rock became an altar. And then something interesting happened. The angel of the Lord did something So he would be the angel of the Lord, angel of Jehovah, did something wondrous. Now, what is this wondrous? The word wondrous is the same word, uh, in this case, pala or miraculous. Same concept as this wonderful, right? This wonderful and wondrous thing. It is something that he couldn't understand. While Manoah and his wife looked on, it happened as the flame went up toward heaven from the altar. So what happened is this. You find an altar, which is a piece of rock. And then you place the animal. And then it is burned, right? It's burnt. So set on fire, basically. And you will find that there'll be smoke going up. In this case, something that he didn't understand or he could not comprehend happened. Some wondrous thing happened. The angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. So what basically did happen was the man of God, right? The man of God somehow, right? Somehow just went up in the flame and smoke and disappeared. Now, of course, this is something that no one can understand, no one can comprehend. It is not an ordinary thing. That is what the English language translates as wonderful. Like, I don't know how to explain it. So when Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell on the faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife, then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. Now being convinced, Manoah said to his wife, "We shall surely die because we have seen God." Now, he would have misunderstood. This would be Exodus 33:20. This applies to seeing Jehovah, not an angel. And so the wife is smarter. The wife said to him, "If Jehovah had desired to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands, nor would he have shown us all these things, nor would he have told us such things as these at this time." And so I would suggest that the woman is far smarter than the man in this particular case. She was able to logically decipher whatever has happened. And she then, in verse 24, bore a son, gave birth. Now, understand that a lot of things have happened from here on, such as pregnant, that you need to carry the pregnancy. And so this period of time is not discussed, which would be months, right? About 40 weeks. And so it jumps from verse 23 to verse 24. And verse 24 is an "and then." So a lot of things have happened. So oftentimes when I put the word "and then," it doesn't necessarily mean that it's after that statement was made, but things happen after that scenario. She bore a son and called his name Samson. And this word is Shimshon. Now, obviously, you can see that it's quite different from the English name Samson. The reason being is we are reading the Greek translation name that was eventually translated into Latin, and then we have the English. But the original name is Shimshon. Now, Shimshon spells this way. And why am I showing you this is I just want you to understand these three letters refer to sun, sunlight. Basically telling us the meaning of the name, like the sun. So Samson by English name or Shimshon in the Hebrew name has a reference to the sun. And the child grew and the Lord blessed him. Now, again, I mentioned this. When God blesses, it happens. When man blesses, it's a good thing to say. Right? And then it says, and the Spirit of God, so this is the Ruach, and the Ruach of Jehovah began to move upon him. And this word move upon him literally means, I guess you can say it appears to him, this word move upon him literally means appears, come upon, become great or strong. So think of it this way. Samson is not a normal person. So when we see Samson portraying features that is superhuman, the people would immediately ascribe, oh, there must be the Spirit of God in Samson because God is powerful and Samson is powerful, and they will equate the two together. And this would set Samson apart. And we are told that he was in the camp between Zorah and Eshtaol. And this is in the Manahe Dan. Now, Machane actually means the tents, right? The camps, the camp of Dan. Because Dan doesn't have a particular fixed location just yet. And so where the Dan tribe lived, then we have Shimshon or Samson. And as the child grew, people are able to tell this child is different. It's like Superman living amongst the tribe of Dan. And they would ascribe God's spirit, God's presence. Somehow, Samson is able to do what he does because of what God has given to him. So that is how verse 24 and 25 is described. Now we are at the beginning of the story of Shimshon. You will also notice that Shimshon, as a judge, is not quite like Deborah and all the others. Shimshon, as we come to the close today, is a judge that appears to act by himself. He is portrayed or described as a lone ranger. He is described as that Superman that comes to the rescue of Israel. And so he is seen as the savior of Israel, not particularly a judge of Israel, where he brings about the repentance of the people, the obedience to God, and so on and so forth. Samson was not that kind of a judge. And so, with this, we come to the end of our session today.